Fridays are awesome. This is the 10 minutes of commercial-free current events known as CNN Student News. My name is Carl Azus. If you were to ride a roller coaster with ups and downs like the stock market's had recently, you'd be sick. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is exactly that, an average of 30 significant stocks in the New York Stock Exchange. It's one measure of how the whole stock market is doing. Wednesday, it jumped. Yesterday, it dropped. 335 points, its worst day of the year in points. Why? One reason is the European economy. Investors are getting nervous that Germany, Europe's biggest economy, could slip into a recession. And when investors get nervous, they sell stocks. Another reason, the Fed. Its recent moves indicate that it thinks global economic growth may be slowing down.
So we've all heard that phrase that, money makes the world go round, but you may have asked yourself once or twice, okay, well, who makes the money go round? So the answer is the Federal Reserve, or as my friends and I like to call it, the Fed. So the Fed is pretty much unlike any other U.S. institution that I can think of. It's run by a board of governors based in Washington, D.C. It has 12 Federal Reserve banks located around the main banking centers of the country, so places like New York, San Francisco, Philadelphia. The presidents of these banks and the board of governors, they meet 8 times a year to make big policy decisions and to ensure that the economy is moving at a stable clip. So Congress oversees the Fed, but the Fed doesn't really answer to Congress. The Fed operates completely independently because it doesn't care about politics. All it cares about is basically 2 things. Number 1, keeping prices stable. And number 2, trying its best to ensure that everybody who wants a job gets one. So if the economy is heating up, it tries to cool things down by raising the cost of borrowing, by making it harder to borrow money. And if things are getting too cold, it does the opposite. So you can sort of think of the Fed like Goldilocks. It doesn't really like things too hot, too cold. It wants everything to be just right. So you're probably wondering, okay, well, how does the Fed work its magic? What's its secret weapon? The answer is interest rates. So the way the Fed gets interest rates at just that right level, at that sweet spot, is through buying and selling US Treasuries and other bonds. So when it wants to cool the market down, it sells US Treasuries, stashes away the cash, and that reduces the money supply. So that makes it harder to borrow money, and that basically slows down economic growth. When it really wants to heat the market up, it essentially starts buying up US Treasuries and other bonds that floods the market with cash and fuels economic growth. So it's not necessarily a perfect system, but it works, at least for now. And as they say on Wall Street, don't fight the Fed.
In Hong Kong, the city's government has called off talks with protesters, and it's not clear what'll happen next in the standoff between these two sides. Some background. Thousands turned out in recent weeks, most of them students. They blocked access to Hong Kong's business district. They demanded a greater say in how Hong Kong's leader is chosen without intervention from mainland China. Hong Kong's current leader was approved by China. He says the upcoming elections will be fair, and his government has called the protests illegal. But it also scheduled talks with the protesters, talks the government called off when protest leaders asked supporters to keep their occupations going.
The protests in Hong Kong have set the territory's population in direct confrontation with its political masters in Beijing. Here's the history. For 150 years, Hong Kong was ruled by Britain, and as a result, Hong Kong people came to enjoy a number of freedoms that are unheard of on the mainland. Freedom of the press, freedom of expression, and freedom of assembly, the right to protest. Now, when Britain handed Hong Kong back to China in 1997, China promised to keep Hong Kong's special status. They called it one country, 2 systems, including allowing Hong Kong people to have direct election of their chief executive, their governor, so to speak, by the year 2017. And it is that promise that Beijing is now reneging on, saying that the Hong Kong people can vote, but it's Beijing that's going to choose the candidates. Here's what's at stake. It's precisely Hong Kong's special status that has made it so attractive to so many people. 60,000 Americans live there, hundreds of thousands of foreigners, hundreds of foreign companies, including American companies, as well as thousands of mainland Chinese who come to Hong Kong precisely for those freedoms that Hong Kong has, but mainland China does not. Now, from China's perspective, however, protests are a direct challenge to Beijing's rule, and they worry about them not only in Hong Kong, but they worry about the protests there spreading to mainland cities. And that's why, if you're living in mainland China right now, you're not seeing any press coverage whatsoever of those protests in Hong Kong. You can't even read about it on social media. So what now? The trouble is neither side seems willing or capable of backing down. From the Chinese side, China's President Xi Jinping, who was once heralded as a reformer, is actually just as repressive as his predecessors, in some ways more so, cracking down on dissidents, censoring news coverage of stories like the protests in Hong Kong. Now, from the Hong Kong perspective, though, people there feel that they are fighting for their very lives. And this is one thing to keep in mind. 25 years ago, when the Chinese government brutally cracked down on popular protests in Beijing, the people of Hong Kong mourned, and those memories are still raw. The fear today that Hong Kong could suffer the same fate.
We're getting tropical on this Friday's roll call, starting in South America and working our way north. Paramaribo is the capital of Suriname, and it's where we're online at the International Academy of Suriname with the Toucans. On the Hawaiian island of Honolulu, there's the La Pietra Hawaii School for Girls. The Lady Panthers are watching CNN Student News today. And we conclude our call in Concord. It's a town in Vermont, and it's where we're happy to see the Wildcats of Concord School. We've covered two significant viral outbreaks this school year. One is the highly deadly Ebola virus. The other is called enterovirus or enterovirus D68. It's far less dangerous than Ebola and much more likely that you've been exposed to it. In fact, doctors say most people who get enterovirus D68 have nothing more than a runny nose and a cough, and that as a whole, it's a lot less impactful than the flu. Still, it has sickened hundreds of people in more than 40 U.S. states. It was linked to the death of a 4-year-old last month. So if you've had cold symptoms, how do you know when it's time to see a doctor?
Here's what you need to know about enterovirus D68. Enterovirus in general has been around for decades, and it's fairly common. In fact, the CDC estimates 10 to 15 million cases in the U.S. every year. But this year, confirmed cases are much higher, with more severe symptoms. Who's most at risk? Infants, children, and teenagers. That's because their immune systems are still developing. Adults can get it too, but they're more likely to have mild to no symptoms. The symptoms are much like a bad cold: the runny nose, coughing, a fever. But more severe cases include wheezing and difficulty breathing. That's when it's time to call a doctor. And here's the scary part. Enterovirus may also be linked to a small number of cases of a mysterious neurological illness. This was reported in Colorado, Boston, and Michigan. One child in Michigan even developed partial paralysis. So, how's the enterovirus spread? Much like a cold. It spreads through the air and lives on surfaces like doorknobs or toys. But there is no vaccine. The best way to protect yourself is to wash your hands and avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. And stay at home if you're feeling sick.
Cat plus cafe equals cat fate. That's the idea at this event in Los Angeles. It's part cat petting zoo, part eatery, part animal shelter, because the food's not all you can take out. If you bond with a cat, say over coffee or a sandwich, you can adopt it. The goal is to get all of the animals adopted out, and yes, they're kept separate from where the food's made, so there's no risk of sharing a hairball with a hairball. What does the menu look like at a cafe? Bet they have Cala coffee, cat puccino, cafe au lait, americano, macchiato, Persistent, frappuccino, Himalayan, and of course, Javanese. Those are some fresh brewed puns right there, y'all. Have a great weekend. Hope to see you Monday.